Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unfiltered and Unapologetic, the space where we talk about healing, alignment, self trust, and what it actually looks like to build a life that feels good without abandoning yourself in the process. I'm your host, Caitlin, born and raised in Lawrence, Massachusetts, but also raised between Bani and El Cibao, and proudly Dominicana. And today we're going to talk about something that sounds simple, but if you really sit with it, it will change how you move through your life. Stop asking for signs and start paying attention. Because if we're being honest, you've already been getting the signs. You've been feeling them, you've been noticing them, you've been questioning them, but instead of trusting them, you ask for another one. Another confirmation, another clearer answer, another moment that feels easier to accept. And I'm going to say this with love. God is not a delivery service. He's not going to keep sending you new signs just because you didn't like the last one. This episode is not about forcing a decision. It's not about just choose already. We've talked about that. This episode is about something deeper. Learning how to read your life correctly. Because a lot of the time, your life is not unclear. You've just been taught not to trust what you see. So clarity doesn't feel how you think it does. I think one of the biggest reasons why people keep asking for signs is because they don't know how clarity feels. We think clarity is supposed to feel peaceful, relieving, obvious, calm, like this moment where everything just clicks and you're like, yes, this is it. But real clarity, it doesn't always feel like that. Sometimes clarity feels like disappointment, grief, anxiety, or I don't want this to be true. Sometimes clarity feels like your chest getting tight because you realize something isn't working and now you can't unsee it. Sometimes clarity feels like loss because once you see the truth, you have to acknowledge what it costs you to ignore it. And that's the part that people don't talk about. Your nervous system doesn't celebrate clarity if that clarity requires change. It reacts to it. It questions it, it resists it, it tries to soften it. So what do? We go, maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I need a sign. Maybe I'm just emotional right now. But be honest, sometimes you're not asking for a sign. You're asking for a different answer. Especially in our culture, in the Dominican culture, we're taught to stay, to endure, to make things work, to not give up too quickly. So when clarity shows up and says, this isn't right, this doesn't feel good, this isn't aligned, it feels wrong to listen to it, even when it's right. So now you're stuck in this place where you feel it, you see it, you know it, but you don't want to accept it. So instead of honoring the clarity, you delay it, you question it, you ask for another sign. And the truth is, you don't need more clarity. You need to stop rejecting the clarity that's already here. I have the first journal prompt here for you guys. What truth feels clear to me but uncomfortable to accept? And the affirmation for this question is, I allow clarity to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. So let's go a little deeper, because I don't actually think the problem is that you're not getting signs. And I don't think the problem is that you don't notice them. I think the real issue is this. You don't trust your interpretation of what you're seeing. You feel something and then you question it. You notice a pattern and then you explain it away. You get a moment of clarity and instead of sitting with it, You look for confirmation from people, from social media, from a sign, and it sounds like, am I tripping? Or maybe it's not that serious. What if I'm wrong? What if I leave and it wasn't actually a problem? So instead of trusting what you are already aware of, you pause your own knowing. And this is where people get stuck for a long time. Not because they don't see what's happening, but because they don't believe they're allowed to trust what they see. So you start outsourcing your clarity. You look for validation, agreement, reassurance, something outside of you that tells you, yes, what you're feeling is correct. But here's the truth. You're not asking for signs. You're asking for permission to trust yourself. And when you don't trust yourself, everything becomes confusing. Even things that are actually very clear. Because clarity without self-trust will always turn into doubt. So now you're in this loop. You feel, you question, you see, you minimize, you know, you delay. And then you say, I just need a sign. But the sign already came. You just don't trust it. I have another prompt here for you guys. When I get a moment of clarity, what do I do next? Trust it or question it? And the affirmation for this question is, I trust what I see, feel, and understand without needing external confirmation. All right, so let's talk about something that people don't like to admit. Sometimes it's not that you didn't get a sign. It's that you labeled something a sign that was actually a red flag. And I want to be clear, this is not about being naive. This is not about being dumb or unaware. This is about being human. Because when we want something to work, we will look for reasons to keep it. We call something a sign when it gives us hope, it feels emotionally intense, it aligns with what we want, even if it doesn't align with reality. And we ignore red flags when it would require us to let go. It challenges what we've already invested. It disrupts our comfort. So now you're in a situation where something is inconsistent, but you say, I feel like there's something there. Something drains you, but you say, I don't know, I just feel connected. Something keeps repeating, but you say, maybe this time will be different. But let me say this clearly. Not everything that feels intense is aligned. A lot of the time, what you're calling a sign is actually your attachment speaking. And this is where your nervous system comes in again. Because if chaos, inconsistency, or emotional ups and downs felt normal at some point in your life, your body doesn't reject it. It recognizes it. So now you're not choosing it because it feels good for you. You're choosing it because it feels familiar. And that familiarity, it can feel like chemistry, connection. This must mean something. But sometimes it just means it's something you haven't healed yet. I have another prompt for you guys. Where have I labeled something a sign because I didn't want to accept the red flag? And the affirmation for this question is, I choose clarity over emotional attachment. Not all signs are loud. Not all signs are dramatic. Not all signs come with some big moment where everything falls apart or comes together. The real signs, they're quiet. They're consistent. They show up in ways that are easy to ignore because they don't force you to act right away. It looks like you slowly losing interest in something, but convincing yourself to stay, or you're feeling drained after certain conversations, but telling yourself it's not a big deal, or you constantly going back and forth in your mind, trying to make something make sense, or you having to explain or defend your choices over and over again. Those are signs. But because they're not dramatic, you minimize them. Because they don't feel urgent, you delay them. Because they don't give you a clear yes or no, you overthink them. But here's the truth. The most important signs in your life are not loud. They're consistent. And if something keeps showing up in your feelings, in your thoughts, in your patterns, that is your life trying to get your attention. Not everything needs to fall apart for you to acknowledge that something isn't right. I have another prompt for you guys. What quiet patterns have I been minimizing because they don't feel serious enough? And the affirmation for this question is, I honor the small signals that guide me. Now, I want to take this a step further because there's another layer to this that people don't talk about. A lot of people are waiting on God. Like He's supposed to deliver clarity, deliver purpose, deliver opportunity straight to their door. Like one day you're just going to wake up and suddenly everything makes sense, you feel ready, you feel confident, you know exactly what to do. But that's not how this works. God is not a delivery service. He's not Amazon. He's not going to drop your purpose off, fully packaged and ready to go. He works through you, through your movement, through your curiosity, through your creativity, through your willingness to engage with your life. And this is where a lot of people disconnect because you're praying for direction while living passively. You're asking God to show you what you're meant to do, but you're not trying anything. You're not exploring, you're not creating, you're not following what naturally pulls you. You're not allowing yourself to be bad at something long enough to become good at it. You're waiting to feel sure before you move, and that's the disconnect. Because clarity does not come before action. Clarity comes through action. You don't think your way into purpose. You move your way into it. And this is the part that people don't always want to hear. God will give you the seed, but you have to plant it. He'll give you the idea, but you have to act on it. He'll give you the pull, but you have to follow it. And if you ignore those signs, if you keep waiting for something louder, clearer, easier, you will feel stuck. Not because nothing is available to you, but because you're not engaging with what's already been given. And let's go even deeper. A lot of you are asking for big things: money, freedom, a different life, a different version of yourself, but you're not building the capacity to hold it, because capacity is built through participation, through discipline, through consistency, through showing up when it's unclear, through doing things before they feel validated. So now you're asking for something bigger while staying in a space that can't sustain it. That's why it feels like nothing is happening. Not because God is withholding from you, but because you're not meeting Him halfway. You're waiting for the result without becoming the person who can receive it. And I'm going to say this gently. Sometimes you don't feel aligned, not because something is missing, but because you're not participating in your own life. I have a journal prompt here for you guys. Where in my life am I waiting instead of participating? And the affirmation for this question is, I move with what is already in front of me and trust that clarity will meet me there. Now let's bring this back to God, because I know a lot of you are praying and you're asking, God, show me a sign. God, make it clear. God, guide me. God, tell me what to do. But what if He already did? What if the answer didn't come as a voice or a moment or something dramatic you couldn't ignore? What if it came as awareness, as that feeling you keep trying to explain away, as that pattern that won't stop repeating, as that comfort that keeps coming back, no matter how much you try to ignore it? What if the answer came quietly and you dismissed it because it didn't feel the way that you wanted it to feel, because it didn't make things easier, because it required you to move, because it asked something of you? And this is where people miss it. They're looking for a sign that removes responsibility. Something so clear, so undeniable, that they don't have to question it. And they don't have to act courageously. But God doesn't work like that. He doesn't override your awareness. He sharpens it. He doesn't force your decisions. He reveals your truth. And then he lets you choose. So if you keep asking for signs, but ignoring what you feel, what you see, what keeps repeating, you're not waiting on God. You're delaying your response. And I'm going to say this gently. God is not going to keep sending you new answers for a question he already responded to. Sometimes the silence you feel is not absence. It's space. Space to see if you'll trust what's already been shown to you. Space to see if you'll move on what you already know. Because guidance doesn't always come louder the second time. Sometimes it waits. And that feeling you keep trying to minimize, that thing you keep circling back to, that awareness that won't leave you alone, that might not be confusion. That might be your answer. I have another prompt here for you guys. What truth has been repeating in my life that I keep choosing not to act on? And the affirmation for this question is, I trust that guidance has already reached me and I am ready to honor it. So after all of this, what does it actually mean to pay attention? Because it's not about obsessing. It's not about overanalyzing everything. It's not about trying to control your life or figure everything out perfectly. Paying attention is much simpler than that, but it requires honesty. It looks like this. You notice something and you don't immediately explain it away. You feel something and you don't rush to silence it. You see a pattern and you don't justify it. You recognize what's not working and you stop pretending that it is. Because a lot of the time, the problem isn't that you don't see clearly. It's that you override what you see to stay comfortable. And let's be real, being honest with yourself will change your life, but it will also disrupt it. Because once you're honest, you can't go back to pretending. And that's the moment most people avoid. Not because they're confused, but because they know what honesty will require from them. A boundary, a decision, a shift, a different version of themselves. So they stay in this cycle of questioning, waiting, asking for signs, instead of just being honest. But paying attention, it breaks that cycle. Because now you're not looking for something new. You're honoring what's already clear. And this is the shift. You stop asking, what else do I need to know? And you start asking, what do I already know that I'm not acting on? Because attention is not about control. It's about truth. And when you start living from that place, your life gets a lot less confusing. Not because everything becomes easy, but because everything becomes honest. I have the last prompt here for you guys. What becomes clear when I stop trying to make things make sense and just tell myself the truth? And the affirmation for this question is, I choose honesty with myself, even when it requires change. So if you take anything from this episode, let it be this. Maybe your life isn't unclear. And maybe you're not confused. Maybe you don't need another sign. Maybe you've just been taught not to trust what you see. And once you start paying attention, really paying attention, you'll realize the signs were never missing. You just weren't ready to receive them. Now we're going to end with a prayer per usual. So let's take a deep breath and put your hand on your chest. Dear God, thank you for the ways you guide us, even when we don't recognize it right away. Thank you for the quiet signals, for the feelings, the patterns, the moments of awareness we try to explain away. Thank you for speaking to us through what we feel drawn to, through what keeps returning, through the parts of our lives that are asking us to pay attention. Help us slow down long enough to actually see what you've already placed in front of us. Give us the courage to accept truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Give us the discipline to move, even when we don't fully feel ready. And remind us that we don't need more signs. We need to respond to the ones we've already received. Teach us to trust ourselves in the ways you've been shaping us to. And help us meet you halfway through our actions, our effort, and our willingness to participate in our own lives. Amen. If this episode resonated with you, make sure you leave a rating, review, or comment on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. It really helps the podcast grow and reach more people who need this message. You can also support the show monthly through Buzzsprout. The link is always in the description. And if you're looking for a space to reflect, reset, and get honest with yourself, check out my blank journals on Amazon. All links will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you in the next episode.